Sometimes you go out fishing and you can't catch a damn thing. You change the bait, change your fishing style, still no luck. Move where you're fishing, change positions, nothing. You're busting your ass and opportunity just seems nowhere to be found. It sucks. Welcome to Mud on a Monday, a series highlighting the setbacks along the path to success of individuals who are prominent in their craft. From politicians, business tycoons, and technological visionaries to legends of sports, music, film, TV, and of course, video games. So, how can we make our own opportunities? I felt Satoru Iwata was an excellent individual to discuss here, as he always seems to unearth an opportunity for himself using pretty much whatever resources he has at hand. I'm sure many of you in the gaming community will already know all about this, so I'm going to try to make this as fun as I can. So, in middle school, Iwata is introduced to computers on the Sapporo subway. There was a game called Game 31 that he would frequently play. So, he wanted a computer of some kind, but he needed money. They were very expensive. So, in 1974, he's like 14, 15 years old. Iwata works as a dishwasher and combines that along with an allowance that he would get from his father to buy his first computer, a Hewlett-Packard HP 65, the first programmable computer. Now, I was born in 1987, and I remember in middle school, circa 1998, seeing kids play games on their Texas Instruments calculators, and I thought that was pretty insane. I can only imagine what it was like to have one of these in 1974 when they were just hitting the market. This was a very expensive calculator, even more so than the Commodore PET that he would get in a few years. Let's break that down. So the HP 65 cost $795 in 1974 when it was released. That's when Iwata bought it. So it's not like this guy got some kind of later discount or nothing like that. So safe to say, with taxes, he probably paid something like $860. So for some perspective, the minimum wage in the U.S. at the time, 1974, was $2 per hour. So let's assume that Iwata's allowance somehow covers half the cost. He still has to cover $430. Even this amount alone, working 40 hours a week full time, means that he would have 6 paychecks he would need to save up for that. That's the whole summer right there. And anybody who's worked all summer to try to get some extra cash knows you very rarely can save every single little penny. So somehow he got it. He bought it. So I find that pretty impressive, because sometimes when you can't afford something you want and you're saving slowly, you can get discouraged. Especially, now in social media, you see other people immediately be able to get it, But it doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter. Once you get your hands on it, now it's yours. Now you can do what you want with it. For Iwata, that meant furthering that knowledge, that development of having an interest in games and making games. So, within a year, Iwata's programming his own games and playing them on a calculator shared by classmates of his. It's pretty amazing he got that far so quickly. Almost makes me wonder if he started learning to program that calculator before he physically had it. I don't know if that would have been possible, but in any case, Iwata, from everything available, seems to put an insane amount of time combing through technical data that he can get his hands on. So I wouldn't be shocked if 14, 15-year-old Iwata's already has that. So obviously, what we can learn from this is when you can't afford it, I guess it's okay to save up slowly. I can definitely relate there. So the best we can do is see what skills we can improve in the meantime. Sometimes it sucks, especially I know you can use, for example, Blender, for art, but some creators are not so lucky. Like, say you want to capture your gaming while you're streaming as well. I have only recently heard about this. A lot of you guys use Elgato equipment because of how reliable it is. That's expensive. And when you don't really have a lot of money, I can imagine that it's pretty damn tough to save up to get there. So for all of you who've done that out there, props to you. So after that, he now is programming on a calculator. He's kind of getting this going. But now he wants to program his own games on a computer, on an actual home computer rather than just a calculator. So 4 years after getting the HP 65, Iwata gets his first real computer, a Commodore PET 2001 series. So he bought this with funds that he was given for graduating. Even that was $600 when it hit the market. So not a lot of people could afford a computer, much less a computer of this quality. I mean, Commodore was well known already. So he took it apart and studied the heck out of it. Can you imagine doing that to something you paid so much for? I mean, if I had to save up the equivalent of like $600 for something today, hell, $600 today is not easy. So, talk about not being afraid to fail. You just dug right in there. Obviously voided the warranty, So, at the heart of the Commodore PET was a CPU, the MOS 6502. So, this is an 8-bit microprocessor. Let's examine this chip a little closer, as it's super crucial to Iwata's future. So this chip, it wasn't just he luckily ended up using what the Nintendo Famicom would have, but this chip was introduced in 1975, and it was easily, far and away, the cheapest and best bang for your buck microprocessor available. The number one. So this microprocessor represented one of two out there that would help bring about the early home computer trend of the 1980s. Many major consoles of the day used the 6502 because of its low cost. Atari used it, Apple used it, Nintendo, Commodore, and more all used this same chip. Imagine being a college kid in the late 70s and actually knowing how to program this thing. And better than most people. Iwata didn't know that he was that good, but I'm sure he knew just when he would go and present his games that he was usually probably the top programmer there. But it's different when you're comparing yourself to actual programmers at these companies. So he would find that out. So don't be afraid to take risks. Iwata disassembled and reassembled his Commodore PET to learn more about it. And it was that drive to use whatever he had available to improve. Even taking a risk such as this. I mean, suppose at some point he's fiddling around with it and it doesn't work now. If he's still on a dishwasher salary and combining that with an allowance, first of all, how easy was it to find a computer repair technician then? How affordable would it have been? And if those were not options, my guess is there had to be quite a bit of pull your hair moments. I mean, I've learned very rudimentary, basic, primitive lesson 1 Arduino projects, and that was very much pull your hair out every hour by the hour until your final hour kind of experience. But then again, I suck at puzzles, so I don't know, maybe to someone like Iwata, maybe to individuals out there more puzzle oriented, maybe taking things apart like that and learning them is more of a natural idea and result that you can get out of it. Whereas for me, I'd probably just look at everything there, and with the exception of at most being able to search up those chip names to maybe get data sheets on it, there's not much more that I could do with that, But Iwata did. So after that, Iwata now wants to deepen his knowledge of video game development even further. He wants to begin carving a career out for himself. So while in college, he takes a job as an unpaid intern at Commodore. So right there, not everyone can afford to take an unpaid internship. But nevertheless, he was lucky enough to have been able to and actually got to work with the head engineer, Yash Terakura. So in the future, that person becomes Iwata's mentor. So Iwata learned even more about the Commodore PET and specifically the 6502 than was even publicly available. So that is already a tremendous leg up on most people. Really, in a way, you could say by getting that information, he's in the industry now. Unpaid, sure, but he's in there. So in college, his room was known as Iwata's Arcade or Iwata's Game Center. He had games on there that were made by him and school friends that other classmates would come over and play. Iwata's skills as a programmer were already getting noticed. He would frequently demonstrate his games at a local club there, where he met some friends who then invited him to join a new company that was being formed, HAL Laboratory. So Iwata joins part-time because he's still finishing school. So don't wait for your career job to find you. Some things are out of your control, like that first job, when it's going to come. So the best that we can do is just control what you can control. Start building up your portfolio, your reputation, your style, your web of contacts. Find a mentor to help guide your development even further. Someone who, you know, that you're willing to take critique from. You got to be open, to critique to improve, right? So a mentor can greatly help with that. So it won't just improve your technical skills, but it also gives you some hands-on, some actual hands-on understanding of how that industry works at that present time. I would say that's pretty priceless. But so after this, now he's at a point where he's in the industry. He's in there. So now you got the job. You're in the industry, right? So at this point, he wants to make games for Nintendo's debut console, the Famicom. So at this point, Iwata was already working full-time at HAL since he had already graduated. And it's 1983. The video games crash is in full swing in the US mainly. And Nintendo decides that it's going to go ahead and release a console, the Famicom. So Iwata was immediately intrigued by it. So he wanted to make games for it. They, being HAL, were already licensed to make games for Namco after essentially making a bunch of Namco ripoffs. So they weren't exactly this new development studio out there looking for their first license. No. So he goes ahead and a meeting is arranged between Nintendo and HAL. So when Iwata meets them and begins showing them what he can do, it becomes quickly apparent to Nintendo staff that Iwata's already more knowledgeable about the 6502 than anyone at Nintendo. So obviously they work with him and he develops 3 games for them: Joust, Pinball, and Golf. These may not be any titles worth playing today. I had never heard of them until learning more about Iwata. Thank you to the gaming historian. So while these may only be really valued for nostalgic effect or by collectors out there, Nintendo fans of sorts and all that, they were each impressive in their own way at the time. So Iwata had a way to just leave his imprints all over the work that he did. The last one in particular was the most impressive of the 3, especially in its day. Nintendo had been trying to have an 18-hole golf game made. 18 holes. But nobody wanted the offer. Because, frankly, nobody could fit that much data into a single cartridge. And it just didn't make any fiscal sense to split it among 2. So, Iwata decides to just open up his mouth and essentially just say, screw it. I can do it. So he takes on the challenge anyways, because when the industry doesn't want it, but you want to have your foot in the door, fuck it, right? In history, you see individuals, this can be a crucial moment where, in a way, you over-deliver. But that happens sometimes to people who over-promise. You always want to over-deliver. You never want to over-promise to then under-deliver, right? But there's always those moments where you do over-promise. And in the end result, you end up having to do whatever it took to get there. It becomes a pivotal moment in your career. This is exactly that for Iwata. So Iwata's mastery of the 6502 turns out to be night and day difference for his career. Completely changes everything. So in hindsight, it seems like destiny, but being that the chip was more common than it seemed, it just so happened that Nintendo decided to use it too. And it just so happened that Iwata happened to intimately know that CPU. So things just have a way of working themselves out like that, right? But not without quite a bit of effort and quite a bit of legwork by Iwata. So the higher ups at Nintendo, including then President Hiroshi Yamauchi, were, I'm hoping I'm not butchering that, were very impressed by Iwata's programming skills, but also the leadership qualities that he showed. So they decided to invest in HAL. So the guy goes from wanting to make wanting to make games for that console, to getting a meeting, to knocking that meeting out of the park with his technical skills, and then subsequently after that, a partnership begins and they invest. That's how impressive this guy's programming skills were. That's insane to me. So essentially the lesson here is stay ready so you don't have to get ready. You never know when an opportunity could present itself, and you'll need to show what you've got in a spur of the moment. Very tense, for sure, but it could be a career-changing moment for you. So the best we can do is to continue honing our skills in our respective crafts, keep our ears open, and remember to take time away to keep our batteries from running too low. You don't know when opportunity is going to knock, when a shot might be available. So stay in prime position. So now Iwata's at HAL, and HAL has this amazing partnership with Nintendo, right? And Nintendo sees a lot of potential in the future of that partnership. But over at HAL, things are rough. It's the early 90s, and Iwata's now the development manager there. The company's on real bad times, like to the point of bankruptcy. They needed a hit badly, and they were in debt like 1.5 billion yen. They had some decently successful recent titles like Balloon Fight, which ran even smoother than the arcade version. Grand Prix 2 3D Hot Rally, which featured Nintendo characters, but it wasn't enough. They needed something even bigger. So Iwata decides, as part of him now being the development manager there, things kind of change there. Nintendo decides that they're going to pay off HAL's debt with one condition: that Iwata gets promoted from development manager to president. Iwata did not want to take that. He was very happy being on the development side of things. But after everything that had, gone on, decided to agree with it. Okay. So as part of, now being the president, Iwata decides to personally get to know every HAL employee. And that's probably the best way to find out what you have, what you're working with, and what we can do with what we have to get out of this mess, right? Very Iwata. So in that, he finds a young man with an idea that he thinks is genius. It's making a game that anyone could play, but could also be challenging enough for the more serious gamers. Now noted legend Masahiro Sakurai was 19 and provided Iwata with a brand new intellectual property that would not only help save HAL, but would help bump up Iwata's already impressive resume even further and help steer HAL back towards profitability by paying off that debt. So the game is Kirby, right? It didn't have a very good title, so they went through working with that, and he brings in Miyamoto, who suggests to rebrand it. It sells 1.3 million copies by May 1995 and would go on to sell a total of 5 million. So Iwata learns a very, very special and potent recipe here. Top-notch programming, Miyamoto's imagination, and an accessible game for anyone to play. Specifically, the accessibility portion is huge, and for the rest of his career, it's something that he continues to go back to. So when you don't have much in a difficult time, just look at what you do have around you and see how you can use that. It sucks. There's no magic, oh, maybe something will fall in my lap. Sometimes it just doesn't, right? So, but every now and then there's a little hidden gem that we can use. There's something in our inventory, so to speak, that we can use to get ahead, to get out of this dungeon. So pay attention to see what works, what doesn't, and note what does and why something didn't work. Let all that snowball up, and you're going to have something potent. You're going to have your own little potent recipe. Success is rarely ever a straight path. It's always riddled with failed attempts, minor wins, and a lot of confusion. But all of that paves the way to that big moment when you land one of the biggest wins of your career. Iwata goes on to have further moments that show just that, and just leaves his peers, the industry, fans, the world over in awe. I'm sure many of you already know that, but if you don't, you need to check out the Gaming Historians episode on Satoru Iwata. You can't miss it. So that pretty much concludes the podcast segment for talking about Iwata. We're running on roughly like 22, 23 minutes probably by now. So now I want to talk a little bit about the second half of the podcast, the guest segment. So for anyone interested out there, my DMs are always open. And here are the objectives of the guest segment. I'm hoping to provide a platform for individuals in the indie gaming community, such as developers, artists, composers, marketing, advertising folks, programmers, writers, gamers, streamers, bloggers, game testers, and many more I'm forgetting, I'm sure. You can introduce yourself as you like when you're on the show. You can say who you are, what you do, your interests. It's really your choice how you want to introduce yourself on here. It'd be cool for you to discuss your current project. What's it about? How did this project come to be? Where can interested listeners find updates on you and your work? And for a little pressure cooker, we're on an elevator. So pitch your game to me while we share an elevator ride. Another thing would be, if you'd like, you can share one of your own tales from the mud. A moment where you felt you're going to be stuck in the trenches and that's it. And somehow you didn't. Another thing to discuss I thought would be cool for someone just starting out in your respective craft. What would be your top 5 tips that you wish you knew when you got started? Then what are the 3 hardest things that you've had to learn in your respective craft? Mind you, that won't be limited to just the technical aspect. It's a whole lifestyle. Then I thought it'd be cool to do like a little lightning round of questions. And, things like games, food, seasons of the year, dogs, cats, or another pet, things of that nature. But yeah, that concludes this episode. Thank you for listening. If you, like I said, are interested in being a guest, hit me up. Let's figure it out. Let's set that date. And let's keep it pushing. So for anybody out there, have a wonderful week. The next episode will be up in about 2 to 3 weeks as usual. Sorry for this episode being late. It's been a rough little weekend. For any basketball fans or those who were also inspired by his work ethic, Kobe Bryant passed over the weekend. So I normally record these on Sunday so that they're up by like Monday. But it was just kind of like a rough week. My mind was just kind of all over the place. So rest in peace, Kobe. We will not forget your work ethic. Best way to honor Kobe is put it all into your own craft and support women's basketball. Yeah, support women's basketball. Do that one. So have a wonderful week. Have a good one. And thank you for listening.